So we're going to take this jQuery code and de-jQuery it. All right? We're going to take the jQuery out of it. So the first thing that I can do is obviously comment this out, right? We don't need to bring in the jQuery script. Yeah, so sad, right? Goodbye jQuery. We had a good time. All right, cool. So we've got this onReady function, and right here I've got my document.ready. Of course, we're using the $ right in there. How can we change that? Does anyone know how we can add an event listener to the document in vanilla JavaScript? Say it again.
Add event listener.
Yes, we can do that indeed. So let's do it. So let's go down here. We'll say document.add event listener. Okay, and the event that we're listening to is going to be DOM content loaded. Oops. Okay, so we can still use our same onReady function, but obviously we're going to make some changes in here because inside we were using jQuery, right? All right, so let's pass this in as our callback, onReady. And then inside here, you can see I'm using the $ again. How can we target this specific button in vanilla JavaScript? So we know its ID, right?
Get element by ID.
Okay, yeah, let's do that, right? Document.get element by ID. Yeah. Yeah, we could try it both ways. So the document.get element by ID, and the ID we know is just btn, right? Okay. Now I can add an event listener to that specific element the same way. So I can say add event listener. Oops. And then what event are we listening for? Click. Okay. And then again, we're going to have a callback function, so we can really just grab what we had inside here. And I'll paste that in there. Okay, and then I'm just going to comment this out in here. All right, so we're mostly getting there. This part is fine, right? Our calculation of the random number, that had nothing to do with jQuery. That was just regular old JavaScript, so we're good there. How about this $.get? That's probably where we're going to have to make some changes, right? Okay. So we're going to use this thing called fetch. Let's look it up real quick. So fetch will enable us to make AJAX requests using just vanilla JavaScript. Keep in mind, however, it doesn't have support in Internet Explorer. All right. Just want you guys to know that. And if you're ever wondering what's supported in specific browsers, you can go to this Can I Use website.
Does anyone support it?
Apparently some things do.
Edge, right?
So yeah, you can see over here, IE has no support for fetch, right? And then also it looks like Opera Mini does not support it either. So yeah.
It takes me back to like middle school computer class. Click the big blue E.
Yeah, exactly. But we do have quite, very good support among all the other browsers, so we're pretty good there, right? All right. So let's look at what we have to do for fetch. So basically, let's come down here. Browser compatibility. Where is the actual? Using fetch? Did it say it? Oh, here. It did say it. We have a guide for it. So this is fantastic, right? If we look at this, basically all we need to do is we can pass in a URL to our fetch request, right? However, this is going to be an asynchronous event. So what fetch will return us is something called a promise. Have you guys heard of promises at all? No? Okay. You've heard about promises, no? Yes, you have. Okay. So what is a promise? Does anyone know?
3 or 4.
Anyone know what a promise is?
Promise. is
In JavaScript, though. Not,
I knew Brian was gonna make a dad joke.
Okay.
Um,
They were on the tip of my tongue. I just let them
a
I was
dad
trying to think
joke.
of one
That's
there.
cool.
I think I was like downloading from your brain.
All right. So in JavaScript, a promise is a special type of object, and what it's saying is that I promise that I'll give you this thing back at some point in time. I don't know when, but at some point I'll either give it back to you, or I will give you back an error. Okay. So with that being said, the Fetch API actually uses promises, and we're going to be able to do something once the promise has been resolved. So if it's resolved, that means things went as according to plan and we're good. The other thing that could happen is the promise could be rejected. Okay? Either some type of error was thrown or we rejected it on purpose, whatever. Okay. So let's work on changing this to use fetch. So I'm going to say fetch, and then I'm going to pass in this URL that we have. And then I actually discovered the other day that we were supposed to be appending a trailing slash to these guys. So we were being redirected in the background, but it wasn't really negatively affecting anything. It just kind of slowed down the request a little bit. Okay. So, but instead of passing in a success handler, again, we're dealing with promises right now. So what we need to do instead is we need to invoke this function then. Okay? And what then does is it allows us to do something once that promise has been resolved. So when we get back a response, what do we want to have happen, right? Okay. But if we're dealing with JSON, which we generally are here, we're actually going to have one extra step in fetch requests. So we need to take the response, then it's going to take some kind of a callback function. We need to take the response and then invoke the JSON function on that response to give us back the JSON content. Okay? So I'm going to have this function inside here, which takes in a response. And then what I'm going to return is just going to be the response, the result of invoking the JSON method. Okay? But the thing is, this also is going to return us a promise. So we have to chain again. All right? One more chain here. So I can come down here and I can say then, now I actually can, inside this callback that I'm about to write, I'm going to have access to my JSON. Okay? We already had a callback for this though, right? Up here somewhere. Success handler. Okay? So we should be able to run that with this because our success handler at this point is looking at actual JSON. There's another thing that we can add to our, or that we can chain to our promises. It's catch. Okay, if I put catch in there, what that means is, what do I want to have happen if the promise errors out, if it gets rejected? Okay, so for, what's that? Like a try, yeah, it is kind of like a try catch, right? So inside this .catch call, I can pass in some kind of handler. What do I want to have happen when the promise rejects? What if I just want to console log the error? Right, so I can pass console.log in there as my handler for errors if I just want to see it in the console. Now, if it was a real application, obviously you wouldn't really want to do that. You'd want to present the user some kind of error. Maybe you'd have one of those little snack bars pop up from the bottom or whatever. However you want to alert them to it. Yeah, have you seen those before?
I haven't seen that. Like
You've probably seen them, you just didn't know what it was called.
You've seen them on Code Dojo. Code Dojo will say Code Dojo says that you have to have input here.
like pops up.
That might be an actual alert, though.
Oh yeah, it is. I guess it comes from the top.
Yeah. That's probably an alert, but a snack bar might be something that would pop up from the bottom of the screen, and then you could close it out, something like that. Or it might even pop in from the side.
Okay. I thought you were talking about like
The food.
A freaking Twix or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably should have prefaced that. Sorry about that. Okay, cool.
I was like, cool, I guess I'll do that on my website. Or Toast.
Yeah, we'll start.
You put an
Yeah, or
H.
toast.
Yeah,
Toast. That's another thing, right?
Toast. Like,
Okay. Cool.
Stop.
So let's make sure that everyone kind of understands what's going on here. Inside here, when we invoke then, we get to pass some kind of event handler how we want that to be handled, right? Okay, and all I'm doing here is I just want to invoke the JSON method so that I can then get the JSON. So it's kind of like this two-step process when we're using fetch. So it seems like a little bit more work than jQuery, but pretty minimal. Okay, and then down here, this is where we're actually running our success handler. That's when I have access to my JSON, right? And finally, if we have an error with our request, we can just log it out, see what happened, right? Cool. So we're almost there. The only thing we really need to change is all of this up inside the success handler, right? Okay. So we were using some jQuery inside there. There are a couple different ways we can do this, but let's do this. Let's just create a couple p-tag elements, and then we'll just append those to the div that we were appending to. All right. So how do I create a new paragraph element? Okay, not in HTML. I mean, it's inside JavaScript.
SDR. Oh wait, we can't do a pound or we just
You name it.
I can just create p1, right? And then I can say document dot create element, and then I'm just going to create a p tag, right? Okay, and then what I can do is I can say I want the
I love that, dude. That's it.
I want the inner HTML, or actually I could probably say inner text in this case because we don't really have any HTML, right? I want the inner text to equal this. So it's going to be this string here. It's going to be the name. Oops, I don't want that ending p tag. So I just want the name plus the actual data, right? Like that. I guess I didn't grab the opening quote. There we go. Okay, cool. So that's P1, and then P2 is basically going to be the same thing. It's only we're putting the gender inside P2, right? So var P2 equals document dot create element. Again, I'm creating another P tag, and then we'll say P2 dot inner text equals all of this, gender. Okay. Now how can I append these to the contents div? Comment that out. Exactly. Yep. So let's try it the other way since we were talking about also doing query selector. So we did one way, which was get element by ID. We can also say document.query selector. And this is kind of a newer way that we can get elements. And inside there, we can pass something that looks just like jQuery. So here I can do the pound sign and then contents. So let's set that to a variable because we're going to append two separate things to it. We're going to append P1 and P2, right? So I'll just say var contents equals this specific div there. And then, whoops. I'm going to get rid of this secondary handler, but we had something where we were going and grabbing the home world. You guys remember that? Yeah. Okay. So instead of that, what we're going to do is we're going to say contents dot append child, and the first child that I'm going to append is just going to be P1, and then I'm also going to do the same thing with P2. Okay. And that's pretty much it, right? We've got everything that we need. We made our call using fetch, and then also we've made the changes to the DOM that we wanted to have happen after the fetch call was made. So let's test it out in the browser and make sure that it's still working the way we're expecting. Go in here, refresh this, make sure we're not getting any errors in the console, so that's good. So if I click the button, okay, still working the way that we're expecting, right? No changes. Okay, now let's just kind of read through this code a little bit so that we make sure that everyone's on the same page and gets what's happening here. All right, so let's start up here on line 21. Miguel, I want you to do, yeah, just line 21. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. Are we invoking this function? No, good. Perfect. All right, line 25. Jessica. So let's go ahead and skip over that for now because we know that we're just setting aside this whole function definition in memory, right? We're not actually calling it right now, so that's fine. All right, cool. Let's get down here to line 43. Well, what's happening on line 43?
Create a function call onReady.
Good. Does onReady take in any arguments?
No.
No, it doesn't. Okay, excellent. Let's come down here to line 69. Brian.
You have the event listeners so that when everything on the page is loaded,
Mhm.
it knows like what to do.
Good. So what is it going to do?
On ready, the function that here.
So we're going to invoke the onReady function, right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So let's assume that that onReady function has been invoked. Cool. So now we need to go up inside onReady, right? Okay. Michael, what happens here on line 44?
You've got get element by ID for the tag with the button ID.
I'm gonna create a return here so that we get a little better readability. Okay.
Just waiting for that button to get clicked, and then it's going to run the function that you defined after the click.
Right. Exactly. So we're getting this button by ID, and then we're adding this event listener to it so that when it's clicked, we're going to run this function inside there. Okay, cool. All right. So next, let's assume that the button has been clicked, okay, because we did click it in our demo. What's going to happen next? So this function here that's set up as the event handler, Ivan. What's going on there?
46.
Yeah, line 46.
So we listen for the click, and then we perform the function.
Okay, so the function has now been invoked. So now we're inside this function, right? On line 47. So what's happening there?
Just have our variable for random,
Mm-hmm.
and then just that whole $C we have now for, and then just log it, log the number,
Okay.
which we're going to be using to call our API.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we did use this, right? We're actually
Yeah.
using the random number to
Yes.
pick, you know.
Forgot the comment tripping
Yeah.
out. I thought that was a completely different thing at the bottom.
No, that's just part of our refactor. That's just us taking out jQuery.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
We fetch it with a random at the API.
Okay. So then, yeah, we invoke this fetch call, right? Okay. Now, what does fetch return again, Tom?
The Fed will return I believe I don't know how to say that word. It's gonna return the data from
Remember, fetch is kind of saying like, hey, I'll get back to you with,
Yeah, get
with
back
that
to you.
information at
Yeah,
some point.
that
Okay, so what do we call that special object?
Don't remember.
No?
Is it a promise?
Yeah, call.
It's a promise.
Promise.
Right? I promise I will give you back this data at some point. Okay, cool. All right. So let's say our promise has resolved, right? We've gotten back some data from the API. Now we're inside here, right? We're inside, we've now invoked this callback function that we had inside of our .then. Okay, so what's that going to do? Ryan.
It's just going to return our JSON information, which is just our all of our in your console the funky looking numbers and letters that also contain all the data that you get back.
Funky looking numbers and letters.
JSON comes back with all kinds of weird like tags. And
Okay.
stuff,
All that shit.
But yeah, all that
Very
stuff.
scientific.
All that stuff, yeah, that's very technical. All right, so let's get technical with this, right? This, we don't yet have the JSON. So what we're returning here when we invoke response.json is we're returning another promise, okay? So again, only this time we're saying, hey, I'll get back to you with that JSON shortly, all right?
When you pull from the API though in the console, you have access to the JSON data.
Yes, if we look in the network requests, let me go in there and do that. So if we open up the network tab here, let me make one more here. Seems like I always have to, okay, here we go. So we've got all of our calls down here, right? And I think what Ryan's saying here is that if you go to the preview, you can look at all the JSON like that, right? So that's pretty nice. But in terms of actually getting it
Oh, I see,
back
I see.
from our fetch
We
request,
don't actually have it on our
yeah, we don't have it yet. We just have the response. But invoking response.json is going to return us back another promise. Okay. Okay. But that promise, once that resolves, what's happening down here? We get to this success handler, right? Okay, cool. So that's where we are. So let's go up to our success handler. All right. So let's assume the success handler was invoked. Anthony, what's happening there?
We're declaring a variable tab 1,
Okay.
p1, which is assigned to document create element p. So we're creating a p tag.
Okay, so this is giving us reference to the p tag that we just created, right? Okay, good. Next,
And then
on line 27.
we want that in it. So now we're accessing the p tag and putting substituting a string
Right.
and variable data.name the object reference.
So here's what I'm saying. I'm saying I want the inner text of my p tag to be equal to this string, and I'm just using string concatenation, right? Okay, cool. All right, and then down 29, Tom.
29, we declare the variable p2,
Mhm.
which create the element on the page with the p tag.
Is it on the page yet, though?
It's just a document.
We created the element, but is it
No, it's
actually
not
on the
on the
page?
page,
Not
it's
yet
just
on the
the
page,
variable,
right?
yeah.
Okay, very good.
The next line is we print on the page.
We're putting it on the page on line 30?
No, it's not.
Nope,
It's just inner
Not yet,
text.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, on line 30, all we're doing is we're just setting the inner text of this element that again is not yet on the page. Okay, let's go down to line 36. Anna?
So here we're establishing a variable called contents.
Right.
And then in that we are going to query selector to make.
So what does this pound symbol tell us in there?
It's grabbing. Isn't that the div that we created above
Mhm.
to hold all of our content?
Right.
So it's just creating the variable to be that div.
Okay, but why am I using a pound sign in there?
Just to call it from above. To identify where we want the information to go.
Okay, specifically what kind of identification is that?
It's not a class.
Yeah, it's just the divs ID.
ID.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So if I wanted to actually query selector of just a specific element type, I would do it without the pound symbol, right? So if I wanted to find the very first div on the page or something, I could say query selector and then inside their div. Okay. Or if I wanted a class, dot whatever the class name was, right? Okay, cool. All right, next, lines 38 and 39. Miguel.
So here, we're just appending the variables that we added set strings to.
Right.
So that they appear on the.
So now they're actually on the page, right? Cool. P1 and P2. Excellent. You guys feel pretty good about this?
Yeah, seems like a lot more work.
It's maybe a little bit more verbose, right? But we're all but we can also take I don't know, take pride in knowing that we didn't have to use this outside library, right?
Yeah, no.
This is just all our own code.
It's like, oh, if you don't have jQuery or anything,
Don't worry about it. Still like.
Yeah, it's okay. We don't really need to fall back on anything because we can use the regular browser APIs to do the stuff that we want to do. Okay, so that's why I wanted to show it to you guys, because sometimes in the web fundamentals, people might think, this is just how we do it. We do it with jQuery. Yeah, I mean, for a large part, that was how things were done for many years. But nowadays, browser APIs are good enough that we're able to write code like this that does the things we want it to do. All right. Cool. Let's have thumbs all around.
That isn't until we learn Angular, right?
What?
That isn't until we start learning Angular, right?
Oh yeah, things have changed up a little bit with Angular, but
It's a little hustle.
Is it better practice to do it like this, like make your own variables, or to do using an HTML to just put everything on the elements?
You could do that too. I just wanted to be a little bit more explicit and a little bit more verbose about how we were doing. I mean, as Alex was pointing out, this isn't the only way that we could append some HTML to the DOM. I mean, there are definitely other ways of doing it. I just wanted to show that we're kind of doing it one step at a time. But what he was saying is that you could create a bigger HTML string and then just append that guy in there too, kind of like how we were doing with jQuery. Any other questions? No? All right. Cool. Thanks for coming, guys. You got it.